Today, we're going to build a toolkit for leaders, because in a world that's just full of uncertainty, making the right call isn't about some vague gut feeling. It's about having the right frameworks in your back pocket. We're going to explore how you can pull together some really different approaches to risk, not just to get through the chaos, but to actually come out ahead because of it.
Okay, let's just start with this idea, because it really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. We are not talking about being reckless. We're not talking about just rolling the dice. We're talking about a core skill of leadership. Having the guts to move forward because you've done the homework, you've mapped out the terrain, and you have a real strategy for dealing with the unknown.
So, here's the game plan for building out our toolkit. First, we're going to dig into why risk is right at the heart of leadership. Then we'll get practical and talk about setting boundaries and figuring out how big of a bet to make. After that, we'll get into a mindset that's way beyond just being tough. And finally, we'll put it all together to see what this integrated risk leader really looks like.
So let's zoom out for a second. Why do we even need this toolkit in the first place? Well, it's because taking on the right kind of risk is what really separates just managing things from actually leading people. I mean, just think about it for a second. Every huge breakthrough, whether it's in tech or media or anything else, came from a leader who was willing to make a move without any guarantee it would work. You've got Elon Musk basically betting his entire fortune on electric cars when everyone thought he was crazy. Or Oprah Winfrey deciding to launch her own network. These weren't just wild gambles. They were bold, calculated decisions based on a clear vision, made right in the face of total uncertainty. And this isn't just about the CEO. A leader's most important job, maybe, is to create an environment where the whole team feels safe enough to take smart risks. And that means changing how you think about failure. It's not something to be punished, it's just data. It's a lesson you just paid to learn on your way to the next big thing. When your team isn't terrified to fail, they're finally free to create something amazing.
Okay, so we're all on board risk is essential, but how do we actually do it without, blowing everything up? Well, that brings us to the very first tool in our kit, a clear framework for setting the rules of the game.
Now, before we go any further, we have to get our terms straight. There are these two phrases that people throw around all the time as if they're the same thing, but they're not. Risk appetite and risk tolerance. So think of it like this. Risk appetite is the big strategic decision. We're going to try to become the market leader in Europe, and we're willing to accept the risk that comes with that. It's the destination. Risk tolerance, on the other hand, is the specific guardrail. Okay, to do that, we won't spend more than X million dollars and we can handle a potential loss of Y in the first year. So appetite is the what, and tolerance is the how much.
But here's the thing. A fancy statement about risk appetite sitting in a binder on a shelf is completely useless. The real magic happens when you make it actionable. And you do that by starting with the big picture. What are our huge strategic goals? And then letting that flow all the way down to the tactical decisions and the stuff people are doing every single day. That's how you make sure everyone, from the executive suite to the new intern, is playing by the same rules.
And this is where the rubber really meets the road. When you've clearly defined your appetite and your tolerances, making big decisions is no longer a guessing game. It becomes a conscious trade-off. To go all in on that US market expansion, you are explicitly deciding to accept less growth in Europe. That clarity is a superpower. It lets you move resources with confidence and clearly explain your strategy to everyone. All right, so we've set our boundaries, we've put up the guardrails. But that just leads to another question. Inside those boundaries, when you find a great opportunity, how much do you actually commit? How big should the bet be? For that, we need a tool that gives us a little more precision. And that brings us to something called the Kelly criterion. Now, I know it sounds a little academic, maybe a bit intimidating, but stick with me. It's basically a mathematical formula that was cooked up at Bell Labs, and it's designed to answer one very specific question. What percentage of my money should I put on this bet to make it grow as fast as possible over the long haul? It's not about winning just this one time. It's about optimizing the whole journey. And some of the most legendary investors in the world use this kind of thinking to decide where to put their capital. So let's just make this super simple with a classic example. Imagine you're betting on a football game. You've done the analysis, you've crunched the numbers, and you're pretty confident, let's say 60% confident, that your team is going to win. And the odds are even money. You just plug those numbers into the formula, and bam, it tells you the optimal size for your bet is exactly 20% of your total bankroll. Not 10%, not 50%, precisely 20%. And that's the real genius of it. The Kelly criterion gives you a disciplined way to think. In a business, it's a powerful mental model. It tells you, hey, when you have a real edge, a great product, a wide open market,
Be aggressive, bet big. But at the same time, it has a built-in safety mechanism because it will never ever tell you to bet everything. It automatically balances the size of your risk with the size of your opportunity. Okay, so we've got our boundaries and we've got a tool for sizing our bets within them. But what if we could take this a step further? What if, instead of just surviving risk, we could actually profit from it? This leads us to the most advanced and maybe the most powerful tool in our entire kit. It's a whole new mindset. So to get this idea, let's think about a spectrum. On one end, you have things that are fragile. We all know what that means. Like a teacup. You drop it, it shatters, it's done. Then in the middle, you have things that are robust or resilient. We praise this all the time, right? This is a system that can take a punch and stand standing, exactly as it was. But anti-fragility, this is something else entirely. An anti-fragile system doesn't just withstand a shock, it actually gets stronger because of it.
Here's a great way to think about it. The phoenix is the classic symbol of being robust. It burns to the ground, and then it's reborn from the ashes, back to its original state. That's pretty cool, but the Hydra from Greek mythology, that's a whole other level. You attack the Hydra, you cut off one of its heads, and two new, stronger heads grow back in its place. It literally profits from being attacked. That is anti-fragility.
So how on earth do you build a business like that? Well, you start by cultivating options, so you're never stuck on just one path. And you use what's called a barbell strategy. Just picture it. On one side of the barbell, you put, say, 90% of your resources into something ultra-safe, like cash. Then, on the other side, you take the remaining 10% and make a lot of small, high-risk, high-reward bets on startups or new projects. You completely avoid the mediocre, middle-of-the-road stuff. The goal is to set yourself up to actually feast on chaos when it arrives.
All right, for our last section, let's pull all these amazing tools back out onto the table. Let's assemble the whole toolkit and see what it looks like when it all comes together. The real power isn't in any single one of these tools. It's in how they fit together. Each one answers a different vital question for a leader. You start with your risk appetite framework. That answers the question, what are our rules of engagement? Then, when you find an opportunity within those rules, the Kelly criterion provides a mental model for, okay, how much, specifically, should we bet? And finally, the anti-fragile mindset changes the entire game by asking, how can we set things up so that we actually get stronger from the chaos? And that right there is really the essence of what it means to be a strategic leader today. It's not about being dogmatic and picking one theory. It's about being a master craftsperson, knowing when to use the framework, when to use the math, and when to lean into the mindset, blending all of them together to create a real strategic advantage. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. Your organization probably manages risk. Most do. You have committees, you have procedures. But is it actually prepared to profit from chaos? Take a hard look at your strategy, at your culture. Is it built just to survive the next storm? Or is it designed, like the Hydra, to actually grow stronger from it? That is the difference between just managing risk and truly leading through it.